You're listening to the Future of Convenience podcast, brought to you by Global Convenience Store Focus, featuring senior retail executives and experts in the global convenience, fuels, and mobility retail industry. Hosted by Dan Munford, Nick Scherzer, and Carolyn Schnare. Welcome to the Future of Convenience podcast. I'm Carolyn Schnare, and I'm here with my co-host, Nick Scherzer. And Nick, I saw you not too long ago, so it's good to see you again.
Hey, Carolyn, good to see you again. Yeah,
Well,
we just got back from the US from the NAC show.
woohoo.
Yeah, it was a good trip.
Oh, it was certainly a good trip, and we can get into talking a little bit about that. But I'm bringing on my guests too because the three of us were together throughout this adventure. So our guest today is Karl Hodgson, who is the managing director of Adande Refrigeration, who's also a frequent guest of our program. And welcome to the show, Karl.
Thanks, Carolyn. Nice to see you again, and you also, Nick. So pleasure.
Hey, Karl, good to see you too.
I thought you'd give me a howdy there, Karl.
Howdy, girl.
A good old American hello. So a couple weeks ago, we were all together in Pennsylvania here in the U.S. We were doing a store tours and just hanging out, getting some networking done. I thought that was really cool, and I really wanted to talk with you guys about that. Then the NAC show happened right after that in Las Vegas. So we've all had some air miles and some bus miles, and we've been together and we've experienced a lot of things. So I'm going to just kick it right over to you, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, that trip to Pennsylvania was fantastic. And at Insight, yeah, we've done retail study tours in the US ahead of the NAC show for well over a decade now in multiple cities around the US. And I think it's been a while, in fact, since we were in Pennsylvania, but it's one of those markets that really stands out. It's well known around the world. It's hugely competitive in terms of the retailers that operate there and the standards of their stores and the offer and what they do. So on that tour ahead of the NAC show, we were with a group of about 20 of us. And we got to visit with Rutters, Sheetz, Wawa, 7-Eleven, all of whom really rolled out the red carpet as they always do for our international groups visiting. So it was a lot of fun. And I think one of the things that always jumps out to me when you're in that part of the world is the quality of food service and the breadth of the food service operations, particularly in the made-to-order kind of space. It's really impressive. And Karl, you were with us. What were your thoughts on the time we spent in Pennsylvania?
So Pennsylvania was a very good tour. I mean, you guys always put on a great tour. So it is my second tour with you guys in the US. And once again, you've hit it out of the park. Pleasure to be there and learn. And that's what it's all about. What I like about it, firstly, is how engaging all the potential rutters were. 7-Eleven were, Wawa, Sheetz. They were all fantastic and engaging with the people that were on the tour. Any questions that we wanted got answered, and it was fantastic. In regards to the food offering as well, all I can say, Nick, is it blows me away how vast the food offering is. You tend to get in a QSR market specializes in a burger shop, a chicken shop, etc. When you go to a convenience store, they kind of do the lot, but they do it so well, which I think, wow, how do they do it so fast and so convenient, so quick? It astonishes me. But if you look at their operation and how they run things and how they go about their business, it is very, 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 very well run. They look at technology and they engage with technology, which is at the foremost of their operations. They always want to lead, which is great. Another insight is they always trying to get kitchen managers in, even though it's a small outlet, to run that particular kitchen. And a lot of the kitchen managers actually come from the QSR market, which they understand what is needed, what is required. So they're already up against it and up with it in regards to giving that full customer value, full customer proposition, the experience of visiting a convenience store, especially something like Rutters. It's just fantastic. And once again, their timing to get the food out, you think, how can you make it so fast? It is extremely quick.
Karl, it's a really good point, and it's something that always sticks out in my mind as well, is to your point about QSRs who often specialize. kind of in one area of cuisine and do that particularly well. But when you see these guys delivering such a breadth of offer at that pace and quality and consistency, it's incredible. And I think one of the cool things about being on those tours and being hosted so wonderfully by the retailers is also the ability for the international group visiting to be able to see the back of house and particularly to go into the kitchen area and see how that's all set up in such a tight space and the equipment that they use to be able to produce what they are producing, I think is always an impressive part of that.
Yeah, I mean the kitchen side of things, which is really where my domain is. I'm always fascinated to understand what equipment's getting used and how they're using it and how the workflow operates. Because most importantly, the workflow is what saves time. And if you can
Yeah.
save time by having the right workflow and also the right technology, the right equipment, that speeds up the process so quick. And these guys are exceptional at doing that. Some of the equipment that there and the technology is at the forefront as what's required, whether it's just all electric, which majority of the time all sites were all electric. So they have to think outside the box. What can I use that as electric? But once again, they tend to use what's best in equipment sense for them in their expertise of what they're trying to achieve. So it will be air frying equipment. It will be speed ovens. It will be technology and refrigeration, i.e. Adande in some cases, which was
Yeah.
great to see. Sorry, I had to throw that one in. It's about the awareness.
I was just kind of reflecting on a fun moment you and I had in Sheets, because I know you work with those guys too. And when we were
Yeah.
in the kitchen, we saw the Adande refrigeration units in that kitchen, and it was kind of fun as well to talk to the staff who work day in and day out in that environment, and just to hear their appreciation of that equipment, not just your equipment, but the overall setup. And to your point, how all of those retailers that we visited have really thought through that workflow and how they actually make the lives of their employees easier to be able to deliver what they do.
No, definitely. And you've also got to respect that when they are looking for the equipment, they don't tend to look at the cheaper end. They tend to look at best in class. And one of the
Yeah.
main reasons why people will look for best in class is because of downtime. So if you go for a cheaper option, odds on it you can have problems with it further down the line. By them looking at the technology and getting the better equipment and investing that long term and return on investment, they know the quality is going to be there. They know the downtime. They know that it's not going to break down so often. They know they're going to keep their kitchen running. Keep their kitchen running, the revenue is going to come in, etc., etc. So they're on it straight away. They know that they invest the time to understand it, understand how they're going to operate, understand why they need a particular piece of equipment. They get it from day one.
Mm.
And you said technology, and I've heard many food service professionals call it that. They're not thinking of just the refrigerator or the fryer. They think of it as technology, which probably confuses the heck out of the technologists in the room when they're in the staff meetings and whatnot. But it's true, because it's best in class. It's best in performance and whatnot. So one of the things you mentioned, both of you mentioned earlier, is QSRs and fast food. And I mean, I don't travel nearly as much as the both of you do, but where we were in rural Pennsylvania. And by rural, it was actually still very suburban. There were still a lot of people in there. It wasn't just all farmland, although we did see a lot of farmland and corn, a lot of corn. But as we're going through there, I mean, there's somebody on every corner, there, whether, and you're passing by, in the same parking lot, an Arby's, a Wendy's, a Burger King, and a McDonald's, plus a Rutter's and a Sheetz, and there's one over there. And I thought one of the interesting thing is one of the retailers we visited said, yeah, we actually just bought that store on the corner because, then we can compete with ourselves. I'm like, well, that's a brilliant strategy. So I thought that was a pretty cool visit too.
Well, that was very cool, Carolyn. And I think you're in a good place when when your stores got so busy, you need to build one pretty much across the street just to
Overflow.
overflow and handle the volume of traffic. And I think it kind of speaks to how incredibly those retailers have built up a loyal following to their offer, to their business, their brand, and it's through their connection to the community, the way in which they look after their teams, their people within those stores. And really, although in reality they're big businesses, in many ways they continue to think of themselves as, mid-sized family businesses. Um, in most countries, they would be looked at as large multinational corporations with the size of the turnover they're doing. But, they still have that family run business ethos that flows through the entire organization, and it translates into the customer experience, which I think is part of the magic that they've created and maintained over many, many years.
I think you're absolutely right, that Nick, because for me, that's one thing that I found about it. It was definitely a community felt area. I mean, you take Rutters, for instance; they've donated over $9 million to local charities. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's, I know Sheets do the same.
Yeah,
Is
and
exactly the same
Wawa
as well.
yeah,
And
all of
Wawa,
them.
they
Yeah.
all do it, which to me is very unusual in a small industry like this to be able to get people that constantly do that. But that just
Yeah.
goes to the power of the community, the power of local activity that they put into these type of things, which is fascinating. I think it's
Yeah.
fantastic. It helps, and
Yeah.
you're quite right.
Absolutely. And I think, I mean, kind of more broadly talking about the tour, one of the things I always enjoy about those is just the group of people that you get to spend time with. So we had retailers from the Bahamas, from Canada, from Switzerland, people who come from Portugal, from Brazil, and obviously the UK as well. And it's just interesting to see everyone's kind of shared appreciation of that, but also their different impressions and perspectives from the markets in which they operate.
Karl, did you find yeah, you've done on this is your second tour with us here in the US, and obviously I'm from here. I've done the same thing, and that's actually how I know Nick, because I don't even know where we were, Spain, something like that, doing a store tour way back in the day. I find those to be fascinating. I mean, I leave where I am and I get to go not only just tour some of these stores and just get a different perspective, but it's really just meeting the people and then experiencing it alongside someone. One of the attendees is a what do you call it? A chef. I think he was a chef by trade. And Matt, and he was fun. We just got to hang out with him, but you get to hear like his thoughts on like, wow, did you see how they did that? And I'm like, well, I didn't even think about that, but yes, that's really cool. Look at the way they're making that. Did any of those moments like just stand out to you and just really make you want to just do more of these tours?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that fascinates me is what people are looking at and understanding their thought and their mindset and what they're doing. So one of the tour personnel that was with us, I was asking her, "What are you fascinated by looking at inside the fridge area? What's fascinating?" So she went, "Well, these ones here along here, when you take a bottle out, they're not on runners, whereas the previous site we did were on runners, so the bottle would slope back down." And it makes it easier to grab for the next person. I'm thinking, never thought of that. You're quite right. You're quite right. So where I'm learning, he was learning. He made a note of it and said, "We need to change that." Good idea, good thinking.
Yeah.
But that came about me understanding what the other person what was looking at, and getting involved and trying to understand it. So I do find those type of things quite fascinating. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and it kind of speaks to how much detail is involved in a convenience store, and different people looking at different details, like that example is, and it kind of goes across the entire store when you look at how much detail actually goes into making an efficient operation and pulling it all together.
Yeah, 100%. It's even down to actually the packaging or the packets that are prolonged on the shelves, and actually taking the packet off. Some people don't prefer it when they have to hook it off compared to just sliding off. And
Yeah,
it's certain things at certain weights that allow you to do that. Well, I didn't
yeah,
think of that. I'm thinking,
yeah,
wow, yeah, I get that. I get why they would look at that, because it needs to be easier and convenient for the person that's picking it.
That drives me
yeah,
So
nuts. When I'm personally doing that, all I want to do is like, then I get mad. I'm trying to put it back and I'm trying to be a good, like, just citizen in general and put the thing back on there, even though, and I get mad and I end up just like, I don't want to be like, just throw it at the rack. But then now you're just, anyway, sorry, that was a personal
even the
comment
candy,
there.
if you think the candy, if you look at some of the stores, the candy was lower down. Why is it lower down? Well, it's lower down for children.
Impulse
yeah,
buying.
Exactly. So all these things are going through the people that are putting all these stores together,
Oh, yeah.
and you kind of
yeah,
appreciate what's got to be done and how it's got to be laid out. and the flow it's got to go with inside the store, never mind in the kitchen, but externally as well. And that then leads obviously to the experience of driving up to a forecourt and going, I need to put my petrol in, I need to pay for it. What's the feel like? Do I want to go in? Do I want to buy something? What's enticing me to go in, to have a look at the food menu, to buy my cigarettes, to buy my drinks, etc., etc. So it's all the package together that you've got to try and get that experience, and you've got to catch that fairly quickly, because that person maybe is on a road trip and needs to get away, but then you want them to stop for you and get that convenience of that food, of that experience. So it's hard to do, but they do it really, really well.
Yeah. And that's an interesting point. It's also a great segue to the second part of our trip, because from central rural Pennsylvania, we then went back to Philadelphia and jumped on a plane and flew 5 hours across to Las Vegas, which has a slightly different look and feel to the middle of Pennsylvania. And that was for the NAC show. And I think, Karl, just picking up on the point you were making about the complexity of an overall gas station site, both from the fueling side right through into the store, into the kitchen, all of those elements. That's one of the cool things about the NAC show. The number of vendors there and providers, support companies, who offer all these different solutions, have specialist knowledge in these different areas. And then it's just a wonderful coming together of the industry. I don't know what the final number was, but I think somewhere in the region of 25,000 people there. So from a personal point of view, I found it incredibly, it's always incredibly fun, but a very productive couple of days in Vegas at the NAC show. What were your thoughts on that, Karl? How did you find it?
It's extremely busy. Anything to do with convenience, you will find it there. That is
That's
the go-to
true.
show.
Yep.
If you want to build your convenience store, if you want to understand how it operates and what to do, you will find it there. Even down to the speakers. So, for instance, accelerating your growth. Jim Dodge, the VP from Wrigley's, was talking. You had Brian Ferguson from the EG Group. He's the Chief Marketing Officer. He gave a great speech as well, of the understanding inside certain store elements. Then you got Chris Rappanecker from NAC's Research Data Analysis, the state of the industry, where we're going with that, what we're going to be doing in the future, how it's going to evolve, how far have we gone. So you go there and your mind will just blow, because it's everything you need, everything you require. In regards to the feel of the show, I guess it is a little bit different than Atlanta, Las Vegas. I don't know what it is, but they kind of
It's Las Vegas. That's
yeah.
It's just the energy. There is a lot more
It's the energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do feel that. You do feel that in Vegas, and I'll be interested to see what it's like at Chicago. That's for sure.
I think all three of them are, in terms of those city locations, each have their own unique feel and take to them. And the show itself in all three cities is great, and those elements remain the same. But I guess the city backdrop does bring a different feel to each of them, and certainly Vegas brings its own feel in terms of the city and the location.
So, Karl, you had your company was exhibiting. How did that feel? Did you have a lot of great foot traffic? And I guess my other question would be, like, are they asking different questions? Are the retailers coming and asking like more in-depth questions? Are they understanding food service more lately than they did 5 years ago? Or, just in general, like how was your experience there?
Yeah, for once again, the foot traffic wasn't too bad for where we were positioned. To be fair, we had some great customers come on. We had some great questions. We're tending to see once again more people that are involved in the food service side. So chefs coming on talking to us. Well, chefs know kitchens, chef understand kitchens. Whereas before, 5 years ago, it might have been the guy that's looking after the beverage area, for instance, and more front of house. And then they were only toying with the back of house. They weren't really taking it too seriously and just getting up to speed. But now it seems to be from the smaller retailers or the medium-sized retailers, they're pretty much going, we need to get a decent food offering going in there. So they're asking the right questions, whereas before they weren't. So now they kind of know, if we don't start acting like the big boys, even though we're not one of the big boys, then we're going to drown and we need to do something about it. So they're saying we need to get our food offering the best we can for how big we are. And by doing that, we need to get expertise within that range, within that area. And that's what they're bringing. They're bringing the chefs on board. They're bringing QSR managers on board to do that. Even outlets that are like 30, 40 strong. Whereas before they weren't doing that. Now they're starting to do that. So they're starting to up their game. As the bigger boys up their game every year, the little ones go, oh, we've got to try and catch up. Like, come on, we need to do this. And away they go again. So we had some great customers come, and some new customers potentially, and some existing customers. So it was always great to see, obviously, existing customers get your feedback from what's going on within the kitchen and how well the Adandes are performing. So yeah, overall, it was a very good show.
And Carl, it's an interesting point you make about the kind of advancement of the industry over the years, and particularly this, I think it's an increasing trend and recognition within the convenience store industry, the importance of of the food service side of things. And it always has been important, but I think more and more retailers really pushing the boundary on that and bringing in expertise from areas like QSRs, restaurants, chefs, and people who understand that world, the way in which to deliver it. And I think one of the key things they bring with them is an understanding and an acknowledgement of the kind of technology and equipment that you need to set up a kitchen, to create the workflow, to be able to deliver food service at that level and breadth to a customer who expects the product within a couple of minutes. So it's interesting to hear you say that, and it was good to hear you enjoyed the show as well.
I know from my perspective, as having worked with NACS for a really long time, I mean, food service has been top of mind for several years. I say several. 10 years ago, it was, hey, maybe you should start thinking about getting into food. There's some other categories declining. Fuel may or may not be there forever, although, here in America, it probably will be for quite some time. But it's a driver of getting people in stores, no pun intended. But I think, it's definitely ramped up a lot more. I think there were a couple of chefs on the stage at NACS competing about how to make the best food service. So, while we've said the word food service on this show, this episode a lot, it's important to stay relevant, to stay competitive. And I think, you both outlined that case very well. And I know we saw it in the stores that we went to when we were in Pennsylvania, were somewhat chosen for their food, but most of all their excellence in operation. So I'm glad that we all got to do that together, and I look forward to doing it again wherever we end up next year. We'll do a pre-NACS show tour, Nick. And so we'll keep putting up what's out there, both here in the US and for me overseas on the other side of the pond, on your side of the pond. So I hope to come over and join you guys for some of those. They're fun. You get networking, you get a lot of food. You certainly leave about 5 pounds heavier at best. That's for sure.
That's for sure.
Yeah. So I'd love to say where are we going next, but we're still working on those details. And Nick, I don't know if you wanted to elaborate any more on that.
Not just yet, but we'll definitely be doing it again naturally next year ahead of the NACS show and in Europe throughout 2025. So, Karl, we look forward to you joining us on those here in Europe, but as well in the US in 25.
No problem. Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this has been another awesome episode. So thanks, Karl, for joining me. Nick, also, thanks for sharing all about everything. And thank you so much for listening to The Future of Convenience. You've been listening to the Future of Convenience podcast, produced by Dan Munford, Nick Scherzer, Jenna Ferguson, and Lorraine Evans. It is produced, edited, and mixed by Carolyn, Schnare, and music is provided by Jukebox Music. Tune in every other Friday for new episodes, and please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Learn more at globalconveniencestorefocus.co.uk.